Well, hello there. Yesterday when I was reading, I forgot to do the journal at the end for the Scythe, like we usually do. So this is at the end of that last chapter. Was that 16? Yeah, chapter 16. I think it's wise that scythes cannot glean one another. It was clearly implemented to prevent Byzantine grabs at power. But where power is concerned, there are always those who find ways to grasp it. I think it's also wise that we are allowed to glean ourselves. I will admit were times when I considered it, when the weight of responsibility felt so heavy, leaving the yoke of the world behind seemed a better alternative. But one thought always stayed my hand from committing that final act. If not me, who? Will the scythe who replaces me be as compassionate and fair? I can accept the world without me in it, but I can't bear the thought of other scythes gleaning in my absence. From the Gleaning Journal of H.S. Curry. I have a tickle in my throat. Chapter 17. The Seventh Commandment. The Seventh Commandment. Remember, the scythes have like all those commandments they have to follow. Okay. Citra and Rowan were awakened sometime after midnight by someone pounding on the front door. They left their rooms, meeting in the hallway, and both reflectively glancing toward Scythe Faraday's closed door. Citra turned the knob, finding it unlocked, and pushed it open just enough to see that the scythe wasn't there. His bed had not yet been slept in tonight. It was unusual, but not unheard of, for him to stay out this late. They had no idea what his occasional late nights were about, and they didn't want to ask. Curiosity was one of the first casualties of apprenticeship. They had long since learned there were many things they'd rather not know in the life of a scythe. The relentless pounding continued, not the rapping of knuckles, but the full-fisted heel of a hand. So, Rowan said, he forgot his keys? So? It was the most sensible explanation. And didn't the most sensible explanation tend to be correct? They approached the door, steeling themselves for some kind of combat. How could you not hear me knocking? He would chide. Last I heard, no one's been deaf for 200 years. But when the door opened, they were faced not with Scythe Faraday, but a pair of officers. Not common police officers or peace officers, but members of the Blue Blade, the sign of the Scythedom clearly emblazoned on the breast of their uniform. Citra Terranova, Rowan Damish? One of the guards then asked. Yes, answered Rowan. He stepped slightly forward, putting a shoulder in front of Citra in a sort of protective stance. He felt it gallant, but Citra found it irritating. You'll need to come with us. Why? Asked Rowan. What's going on? It's not our place to say, the second guardsman told them. Citra pushed Rowan's protective shoulder to the side. We're Scythe's apprentices, she then said, which means the blade guard serves us and not the other way around. You have no right to take us against our will, which was probably untrue, but it gave the guardsmen a pause. And then came a voice from the shadows. I'll handle this. Out of the darkness swelled a familiar figure, wholly out of place in Faraday's neighborhood. The high blade's gilded robe did not shine in the dimness of the doorstep. It felt dull and almost brown. Please, you must come with me immediately. Someone will be sent for your things. As Rowan was in pajamas and Citra in a bathrobe, neither was too keen to obey, but they both sensed that their night clothes were the least of their concerns. Where's Scythe Faraday? Rowan asked. The high blade took a deep breath in, and then he sighed. He evoked the seventh commandment. Scythe Faraday has gleaned himself. What? Why would he glean himself when he has two apprentices? That makes no sense. High Blade was a bloated bundle of contradictions. He wore a robe of rich brocades, yet on his feet were frayed, tread-worn slippers. He lived in a simple log cabin, yet the cabin had been reassembled on the rooftop of the Falcrum City's tallest building. His furniture was mismatched and thrift store shabby, yet on the floor beneath was a museum-quality tapestry that could have been priceless. I can't tell you how sorry I am, he told Rowan and Citra, who were still too shell-shocked to wrap their minds around what had happened. It was the morning now, and the three of them, having ridden in a private hypertrain to Fulcrum City, and they were now out on the small wooden deck that overlooked the well-tended lawn that ended in the sheer ledge of a 70-story drop. The high blade did not want anyone to obstruct his view, and everyone stupid enough to trip over the edge would deserve the time and the cost revival. It's always a terrible thing when a Scythe leaves us, said the high blade as he lamented, especially one of well-respect like Scythe Faraday. High blade had a full retinue of assistants and flukies in the outside world to help him go about his business, but here in his home he didn't have as much as a single servant. Yet another contradiction. He had brewed them tea and now poured it for them, offering cream, but not sugar. Rowan sipped his, but Citra refused the slightest kindness from this man. He was a fine Scythe and a good friend, the high blade said. He will be sorely missed. It was impossible to guess that at the high blade's sincerity. Like everything else about him, his words seemed both sincere and not at the same time. He had told them the details of Scythe Faraday's demise on the way here. At about 10:15 the evening before, Faraday was on a local plane platform. Then, as the train approached, he hurled himself in front of it. There were several witnesses, all probably relieved that the Scythe had gleaned himself and not any of them. Had it been anyone but a Scythe, his broken body would have been rushed to the nearest revival center. But rules for Scythes were very clear. There was no revival. But it doesn't make sense, Citra said, fighting tears with little success. He wasn't the kind of man who would do something like that. He took his responsibility as Scythe and training us very seriously. I can't believe he would give up like that. Rowan held his silence on the subject, waiting for the High Blade's response. Actually, the High Blade said, it makes perfect sense. He took an exuberating long sip of tea before he spoke again. Traditionally, when a mentor Scythe self-gleans, anyone bound to an apprentice is unbound. Citra gasped, realizing the implications. He did it, the High Blade said, to spare one of you from having to glean the other. Which means, said Rowan, that this is your fault. And then he added with a little bit of hate, Your Excellency. The High Blade then stiffened. If you are referring to the decision to set the two of you in mortal competition, that was not my suggestion. I was merely carrying out the will of the Scythedome, and frankly, I find you being offensive. We never heard the will of the Scythedome, Rowan then reminded him, but there was never a vote. Highblade stood, ending the conversation with, I'm sorry for your loss. It was more than just Rowan's and Citra's loss, though. It was the loss of an entire Citradome, and the Highblade knew it, whether he said it or not. So, that's it then? We go home now? Not exactly, the Highblade said, this time not looking either of them in the eye. Well, it's traditional for the apprentices of the dead Scythe to go free. Another Scythe can come forward and take over the training. It's rare, but it does happen. You? Citra asked. You've volunteered to train us now? It was Rowan who saw the truth of it in his eyes. No, it's not him, Rowan said. It's someone else. My responsibilities at Highblade would make it far too difficult to take on apprentices. You should be flattered, however. Not just one, but two Scythes have come forward. One for each of you. Citra shook her head. No. We were pledged to Scythe Faraday and no one else. He died to free us, so we should be freed. I'm afraid I've already given my blessings, so the matter is settled. And then he turned to each of them in turn. You, Citra, you will be the apprentice of Honorable Scythe Curry. Rowan closed his eyes. He knew what was coming next, even before the Highblade had said it. And you, Rowan, will complete your training in the capable hands of Honorable Scythe Goddard. No! Oh, and that is the end of part 2. We then go into part 3, the old guard and the new order. Oh. Okay, I kind of can believe that Scythe Faraday maybe did that so he could free them both so they didn't have to kill one another. I don't know. it still is quite suspicious that all of a sudden now Goddard is come forward and he's going to be the trainer for Rowan, right? I kind of can see Scythe Curry, the woman, choosing to have Citron. Where will this book go next? Till next time. Thanks for listening.